Hello, I'm Julia. Welcome to the MindMatters Panel. It's sometimes said that 99% of all statistics only tell 49% of the story, and that 2 out of every 3 people wonder what happened to the third one. To help us figure out what I just said and how schools can use data to improve mental health, we have Principals Australia Institute Senior Research Officer Dr. Catherine Dix, Principals Australia Institute Executive Consultant Tracy Zilm, School Psychologist Sarah Innes, and Deputy Principal Rob Blackley. But first, let's get some inspiration from the staff at Eagleton High.
Thanks, Eugene. Data-driven. That's my mantra. Data-driven, evidence-based charts and graphs.
Bill, we got the results of the parent survey.
Excellent. How many did we get back?
8.
800. That's like half the school.
No, just 8. 8.
Oh. Well, don't keep us in suspense. What did they say?
Well, one of them was returned blank except for a picture.
Yeah, I think I know who that was. Jackson. You'll be having a word.
But, hey, the other 7 said that the school exceeds expectations.
7 out of 8 said that, eh? Fantastic. That's like 80%?
87.5.
87.5%, actually. But I don't think we can use such a small sample.
Of course we can. 87.5% of parents say school exceeds expectations. We can put it in a newsletter. Optimism, Tricia. It's a protective factor.
How can someone who types with 2 fingers be that good at maths? I'm jealous. All I got was boobless. Still funny after all these years. Now, look, seriously, how can you use data and evidence in a school mental health strategy?
It's a fantastic opportunity for schools to find out where their staff are at, where their parents are at, and where their students are at.
Because you don't know sometimes, do you?
Not at all. And MindMatters has these lovely surveys for parents, for staff and for students. And it's that opportunity to engage that whole community by the fact that they're sitting down, reading these items, thinking about what it is a mentally healthy school should look like. And that really starts to bring it real and bring it home for the whole school.
Tracy?
Well, and for some people, that having the hard facts, if you like, even though it's people's perceptions, is what can be the driving force for getting people on board. You know, for some people, that's what they need. I want to see, prove to me that this is something we need to be doing. And so it can be a really good vehicle for getting buy-in from people and an opportunity, as Catherine said, to celebrate successes as well as much more clearly identify where we need to go, and when you redo the surveys 12 or 18 months later, to be able to test out and find out whether what you've been doing has made a difference. Because schools are busy places and often doing lots, but you know, rarely have the time to go back and check whether what we're doing is actually making the difference that we hoped.
Why use it, Rob?
There are a couple of reasons why you use it. The first, one of the most important reasons is that actually, if you take it to the students, you're actually hearing from them. Now, we did a simple survey a couple of years ago. Our toilets are in really terrible condition. They hadn't been changed in 30 years. The feedback when we did some with the students was, fix our toilets. So we did. But they could see that we acted because they said they weren't safe, they weren't clean, and they just wanted a better environment. So that was us also responding to their particular needs in that.
It makes it authentic, doesn't it? If you
does.
start listening to those voices, and that's where the data is incredibly invaluable, is that you're being very specific about what you're targeting by the voice that you're getting back through those surveys or through the data that you've accessed.
How do you get data? Is it always surveys?
No. Look, we certainly use the surveys because it targeted the MindMatters areas that really nicely and told us which areas we could start looking at for our training. But we also use my counselling numbers, my data that comes through, not the names, of course, of the people who are coming to see me, but maybe I get a really good sense of the reasons people are presenting. Is it a social skills issue that's more common in this age group, or is it depressive symptoms that are presenting? There's also discipline reasons. Are we seeing that in our school at the moment greater misuse of technology, and we need more education around how we use those sorts of resources properly in the school? Attendance rates, attendance at school, but also attendance at healthcare where our nurse sits. What reasons are people coming out of class? So there's a whole host of places and within the school that you can access for that information.
So, Rob, how do you use data in your school?
We use it to inform the directions we want to take, or the programs that we might think about introducing, and we'll use a whole range of different data. The surveys on MindMatters provide really valuable information in the area of the mental health. We've got a whole range of other data that we can also be using. We can look at our absentees, our late to school, our discipline points. Are there particular things that are coming up there? And then also some anecdotal data where you might sit down with a small group of students in some sort of focus groups and talk to them about particular things that are of concern. It may be related to teaching and learning, it might be related to particular programs that are running in the school.
And there's a link between getting all this research, improving mental health and academic achievement.
Absolutely. There's more and more research these days to show that the two go hand in hand. Lots of international research that says when you build connectedness, because let's face it, in order to learn, you've got to engage students in the learning process, and they're going to feel more engaged if they feel like they belong and this is a place that's supportive of me. And, you know, I'm not worrying about being picked on outside the classroom or whatever it might be. I can focus on my studies. It kind of makes sense, but we've got the research to back that up.
We had, in the home delivery show I do, one of the comics we interviewed was Nazim Hussain, and the first high school he went to, it was just bad to be smart and to learn and to want to care. And then he finally gets to this other school where he said it was such a relief being somewhere where every kid wanted to learn as well. And he said all the anxiety left, all the, you know, and it was a slightly posh school, that's true, but it was more the fact that he was now in a group of people where that wasn't even an issue, having to go out and fight for the right to be able to enjoy the work that's in the class. I mean, that's fundamentally blows my mind.
The nice thing about the MindMatters surveys is that they're specifically designed to reflect the risk and protective factors that are part of the MindMatters framework, and so it makes it very easy for schools to understand how to take that data and make sense of it and use the data to inform the planning and the strategies that they can see might need to take place.
And it helps you give a starting point.
Yep.
And with 20 online modules, it can be a case of, wow, you know, there's 4 components and 20 modules. Where will we actually start this journey? That can give you some good guidance as to either let's build upon a strength because this was something we're really happy with and let's go with that initially, or this seems to be an area where we really need work, let's use that as our starting point. So making that change process manageable rather than trying to do everything at once.
When you get all this data, what are the advantages of analysing that data as a group?
Obviously brings people together around understanding what the data is saying, and different people come with different perspectives. You know,
so the data is one thing, having all that information, but like you say, analysing it is so important, because otherwise it goes nowhere. And the way that you analyse it is really important. So involving as many people as possible. It might be something that the action team sit down and devote a meeting to looking at one aspect of it and brainstorming what strategies might happen. Some schools have actually taken the data in its collated form and used it at a whole staff meeting, encouraging people to use a technique to say, well, these are what we see are the top 3 issues, and then using another staff meeting to say, well, let's now brainstorm in small groups. What could be some strategies that might come out as a result of the data that we've received and what we've said are priorities? What could we do about those? Let's be as creative as we possibly can. Doing that with student groups as well, you know, doing it with parent groups possibly, and that builds that picture of buy-in with the data, so it's not something dry and boring. And my experience is that once you understand data and the value in it, people actually get a little bit excited about it. And I'm a bit like you, a bit of a maths phobe, but you know, it's a fascinating thing, and it gets you to ask questions and engage in conversation and develop a shared language, which is really important around this stuff too.
How do you know that the mental health strategy is working? How can you know it's reliable?
You're not going to survey people every week. But over time, you can know. So 12 months down the track, or however you decide to plan for it, when you re-evaluate, you can see movement or change. When we work with schools, it's about getting people to, in their plans, set indicators. So what are some of those smaller steps that you might see along the way that will reassure you you're on track for your goal? So the data has told us our starting point and this is where we want to be, but along the way, can we develop the sorts of things that we might see or hear happening that will reassure us we're on the way, or maybe we need to change tack in the middle?
Where do we find the surveys and how do we use them?
The surveys are available to the person that's been nominated in the school to have access to that level of information. So there's, it's password protected and secure and all the rest of it that these anonymous surveys collect. So basically it's the school driving the use of those tools, and they might want to do a middle school focus or just focus on the 8s and 9s parent group and student group. Tracy said, you don't have to do everyone straight away, but you might identify some problem areas. And I think it was said earlier, it is really about making it manageable. But the fact that it's done online means, that it's burden of hand responding and someone hand entering that information is no longer there.
Phil did not get a great result.
No,
there.
he did not.
You can't be relying on that kind of generalised info.
But doesn't the absence of a response mean that there's something about your parent body that maybe you're missing too? That maybe there's something that perhaps you haven't accounted for within you. Maybe they're just so busy, they're all working. Maybe you need to know your school community a little better and consider other ways to do that. So a poor response
is a huge thing.
It might be time
do it near the beginning of
don't
the
do it
term,
at Christmas time.
So you can't give up. You can't give up. To wrap up, remember these words from the technology entrepreneur Jim Barksdale. If we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine.